see you. Hope you're doing well. So today's video, I've taken inspiration from some comments that were left on my last video about is Britain broken? And the first comment was from a user who said that I was lying about talking about austerity and Brexit and kind of why we'd got into the state we had and like privatization and late stage capitalism and all this really fun stuff. You should go check that video out if you're interested in seeing what he thought or I was lying about.
Right, mic'd up now. So he called me a liar. And I thought about this and I had a discussion with various people. And it gave me the idea for this topic, along with a Paloma Faith album title, actually. Do you want the truth or something beautiful? And I think I'm trying to be truthful, I'm trying to be honest, and I'm trying to be authentic. And I'm trying to be objective as well. As I said, I'm not about political sway here. I'm not trying to influence your decisions. Your decisions are always entirely yours to make. However, if I am factually arguing things using data and kind of research stuff, how could I be lying? And I think what it made me realize is I think there's a lot of people out there right now who don't know how to critically think and don't understand how to make sense of the world and to get to the truth, or a version of the truth that's kind of the closest to the truth we can get. And that's what I thought we'll talk about today. So today's deep dive is facts and critical thinking and how we should use critical thinking to shape our opinions and thoughts on things and like take evidence and like, kind of be factual on what we're saying. And again, it was a gentleman left a comment about like, that society had lost the ability to critically think. And again, I sort of put these two things together. So I suppose this video is kind of generated from your comments. So thanks, guys. But it made me think about this topic, and I think it's important. So, this is a bit of a how to guide into how to accept things when they are facts and how to, discern what's the truth, what's the bias, what's the angle here, because actually there's a lot of psychology at work. And the first part of this video is going to be looking a little bit at some of that psychology. So, hopefully, this is going to make sense. Hopefully you're going to get something out of it, and hopefully there'll be some skills that you can take forward. So when you are arguing with people who are throwing sound bites at you or misinformation, you can actually challenge them and have some resources and some tools up your belt to be able to kind of put across that balanced, honest, and kind of a viewpoint with some integrity. So do you want the truth or something beautiful? A cheeky, quirky British guide to how to discern the facts. At the moment, I think a lot of us want to see comfort and happiness and safety, don't we? But there's a lot of scary stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff about wars in Ukraine, ceasefires in Palestine, and it's a bit of a mess and weird things happening in Portland in the United States, and Donald Trump being sulky about getting a Nobel Peace Prize. So it's hard. I mean, are those things really happening? Are these accurate? And like all of these things, there'll be perspectives, there'll be biases about there. So if you ask a Ukrainian about what's going on, you'll have a different viewpoint if you ask Putin himself what's going on. And we all need to be mindful of that and take everything with a little bit of pinch of salt and kind of maybe use our own judgments to figure things out. So we often want the story that is comfortable and we want the story that is easy. But in a world that is saturated with headlines that play to our fears because the media is constructed that way, that's a completely different video. Maybe we'll do that next time. But actually, we need to be able to fact check and verify some of the things that are being consumed by us on a media level. So let's start with the psychology, because there is psychology. The brain has a reward and treat system, and it gets dopamine hits when something pleasant happens to it, okay? Our brain is wired to seek comfort. So this begins in our very early infancy, the minute we are expelled from our mother's bodies, and we seek to be warm and fed and held. And as soon as we achieve those goals, then we are going to get little dopamine releases that make us feel pretty amazing. So this ends up obviously transferring as a skill that we have all the way through our life. So a breakup, it might happen in your life. You might lose your job, or you might have some harmful health habits. And actually, when something uncomfortable happens to you, it triggers that amygdala. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, which is our threat center. So when something happens, it's bad, it triggers our amygdala. Amygdala. Oh my god, let's just go with that. Amygdala, which is the threat center, and they're part of our brain that feels anxiety, dread, and sadness, which obviously are not emotions that we want to feel. And denial, on the other hand, activates the reward side of our brain. Oh, hang on a minute. So to deny something makes us feel better. Is that what we're saying here? Yes, it is. So denial activates the brain's reward pathways, and that releases dopamine and endorphins, the happy exercise hormones that are released when we've been running or walking fast or doing something a bit rigorous. And this preserves a sense of control because we all want to feel like we're in control of things. That is a basic human instinct, isn't it? And then we have cognitive dissonance reduction. So what does this mean? So obviously, if we're thinking about things cognitively, it's our brains, isn't it, and how they think. And this is when reality and your beliefs clash. So I'm a good person versus I just did something bad. So, oh, I'm married, but I'm having an affair, but I'm not a bad person, but I'm doing something bad. So your brain's going to work in a particular way to make sense of that whole situation, isn't it? So your brain experiences cognitive dissonance, which is denying or reframing the truth, and that reduces the uncomfortable tension quite quickly, even if it's not rational, even if it's not logical. So there are people out there that are happily going to tell you lies because it is cognitive dissonance and it makes them feel better. It isn't the truth. It isn't honest. It isn't factual. And so the brain is rewarded and the threat system is turned off. And that's not exactly healthy, would we say? So, this then obviously triggers our psychological defense mechanism. And Freud calls denial one of the ego's defense mechanisms. Okay, so it's not always conscious. Your mind wants to blunt painful experiences and wants to stop us from maybe tapping into reality, to buy it some time to kind of process and make protective decisions. And whilst it can be protective in the short term, in the long term, it potentially is going to be quite damaging, and it can stop you from taking effective or decisive action. So being in denial about something isn't great. I'm just going to pop in the film Don't Look Up here because I feel like this might be quite a fun cultural reference, that they sense that there's they research and find that there's a meteor going to be heading towards planet Earth. And that they need to either destroy the meteor or do something about it. And then is, as a satirical film, it just sort of talks about how people decide to be in denial and to not look up because there isn't a meteor heading straight towards Earth. And we get these polarized shifts in perspective, which kind of obviously was making a social commentary about how the world is today. But actually, this is what that was. It's I don't want to know there's danger and threat when I can live in my bubble and pretend there is no danger or threat. So this brings us to the comfort of a beautiful story. Do you want the truth? Nope. I want something beautiful. And humans have evolved as storytellers. And I often use this as a little thread in my videos, don't I? The narrative that fits the story we wish to tell. Our perspective on something is obviously the story that we choose to make. So we want a beautiful version of events, okay? So maybe that partner that's cheat, they'll change. I can change them. Maybe, something really horrific's happening, but you'll be fine. It's okay. Let's just keep going. Or this isn't so bad. We'll find the comfort in the misery kind of situations. So it feels coherent and it feels emotionally manageable. And that's where we want to be, in a safe space, don't we? And we gravitate to these stories because they keep us functioning. So you can imagine people having to really cling on to these things when they're in some really heinous situations, some really horrific situations, just to get them through the day. So it's a survival mechanism. So it has its place, and I'm not discounting this, but equally, sometimes we're not using it in the right place or the right space, are we? So when denial helps, sometimes it can help us get through a tough situation. So in the immediate like loss or trauma event, it will help us. When reality is too overwhelming, it can get us through. It can help us to function. This cognitive dissonance, this choosing to see the positive almost. However, it can hurt when it delays necessary action or prolongs harm or prevents healing. It's a bit like kicking the can down the road, which is another phrase I do like to use. But yeah, this is it. So there is a place for it. But psychologically, is this something now that we're choosing to do in our everyday lives and not be rational and think about logical things and outcomes and choose to have a version of the truth that isn't the truth and it's a lie? I mean, my video, which was very factual and had data and had no political sway, it was neither pro left, pro right, pro anything. It was the facts. And people didn't want to hear that was how we'd got to where we'd got. And whilst it might be my take on things, I tried to be very objective, but people didn't want to hear that, or one person didn't want to hear that. So it is quite interesting, isn't it? This whole psychology behind it. So how does this work in the real world? So let's have a little step away from the psychology and bring some real world situations, and how do we get the strategies to help us to deal with this in real life? Okay, then. So, in the real world, how does this all translate? So, have you ever experienced a time when you actually believed something? And I'm not talking about Father Christmas here, but maybe something that was political or health or climate related, or maybe something that was just something that you really took to be a truth. And it felt right that you believed this, and then discovered that it was actually false, and then that you'd been sort of talking and sprouting on about it, and actually it might have been a bit awkward and a bit embarrassing. Well, we can all relate to that. I'm sure that's happened to all of us, but there's nothing wrong with being able to go, right, I had the wrong take on this, I wasn't factual here, it wasn't the right thing to say. But I feel almost that some people are just going to stand by their guns regardless. The sky isn't blue, it's da 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 da, and they're just going to argue for the sake of arguing. So, how and why is this something that is happening so much at the moment? Well, let's have some facts and stats and data to support this. So, let's have a look at the data so we realize that this might be a real situation. So, from the Turing Institute, 94% of people in the UK say they've witnessed misinformation on social media. 94% of people. So 94% is a very high percentage. And they say it's misinformation on social media. So people like me, hi, are on these social media platforms talking. And some of us are experts and have knowledge. And some of us are just sprouting our views and opinions. And some of us probably don't have a clue and are just going to be regurgitating what we've been hearing in our own echo chamber. So you can decide for yourselves what this is. But yeah, that's kind of scary. 94%. 4 in 10 UK adults say they've encountered misinformation, or even worse, deep fakes or false news in the past 4 weeks. And this is from Ofcom, so the communications regulator here in the UK. So, okay, that's where we're complaining about these pieces of information. But once they're out there, are they actually causing more harm than they ought to? 42.8, so let's round that up to 43% of British social media news sharers admit to sharing inaccurate or false news. 17.3 even admit they thought it was made up. So 17.3% of people who are social media news sharers are sharing things that are made up. Make that make sense, people? And this is a statistic from Loughborough University. And young people, so those aged 16 to 34, so hi youngies, hope you're doing well, are especially trusting of news from influencers. Yet 77% of that same group say fake news is prevalent in influencer-generated comment. And this is from the IPSOS. So, wow, that's kind of interesting. And that's a shame. And I do think that this ties into that point I was saying about critical thinking. I come from a generation, because I'm still old, where if I wanted to find something out, I'd have to go to the library. I'd have to read the books, go through the catalogues, find the information, and get a few different sources and come to my own conclusion. I couldn't just have it at my fingertips. I couldn't just get the, Wikipedia or, I don't know, ChatGPT to tell me stuff. I had to work it out for myself. And obviously, that was a vital skill to be able to critically think and take in lots of sources and to figure out where I stood on things. And this involved my reading skills, this involved my thinking skills, this is my processing. These are vital skills. And now people are kind of more willing to be told what to think. And is this a problem? I think it might be, especially if our young people are saying they don't believe this. I don't feel this is genuine, but equally, they might not have the tools to be able to go and verify or fact check the data that they need to. And then deep fakes. This is another interesting one. 15% of Brits report exposure to harmful deep fakes, not just deep fakes, harmful ones, with over 90% are concerned about them. So another scary, and this is from RXIV. I'm not sure if I'm pronounced that right. So again, that's scary. People aren't happy about these deep fakes. And with AI and everything and artificially generated content, it's getting a bit scary. How do we decide what is truth and what is fiction here? And how are we being manipulated? I mean, is it coming off the internet? Probably one of these solutions, but we're all very tapped in now. So how do we do that? So trust in media is actually it was very low and is continuing to fall. For example, international surveys show the UK has a comparatively low confidence in the press, and this was from Post Plus One. So we actually don't necessarily trust the media that we're consuming. And these numbers aren't just statistics. They're clues that many of us feel that we're swimming in a sea of half-truths and trying to find that little bit of land where we can feel safe and secure and steady, because it is a wild and chaotic landscape out there and it's very hard to navigate. Okay, so as with everything, I think I've posed the problem. So is there a solution? So, let's think about some critical thinking framework. So 6 steps that we can take with us into our everyday life to help us to figure out whether something is an accurate kind of source. So first of all, you respond to a headline. Let's name the emotion. So I will give you an example in a minute, but let's just go through the 6 stages first. So that headline might make you feel fear or anger or resentment, rage, or a sense of urgency or a sense of panic. So you read it and you decide how you feel about it. What's my emotional stance here? You then move on to who is speaking and why are they speaking? Are they a person that should be speaking? Are they an expert in this? So is there any incentive for this person to be talking about this or for this viewpoint to be shared? Any affiliations? What's the context? If this person is an activist on climate change, they might have a different perspective than the oil company that is benefiting from selling oil. Okay, so again, it's just looking at that situation and figuring out where this person is in their kind of scale of this topic. Then ask for evidence or indeed counter evidence if it's something you agree with or disagree with, depending. So where's this primary source come from? Where could this claim break? Is this genuinely a fact? Are there a couple of other sources that can verify this? So you might have to do a little bit of work here, but sometimes you're already committed at this point, so let's get some backup evidence. One other thing to do is to have a diverse media diet. So echo chambers. I often talk about this in my job and try to explain to young people that you can't just have a diet of exactly the same content. You can't just follow Molly May all the time. It's good to have a broader scope. Get some Greta Thunberg on there. And if you are a Republican, why aren't you looking at what Democrats are saying? And if you're a Democrat, why are you not looking at Republicans? And I'm using American political parties here because I don't, again, want to have any kind of comeback that I'm trying to tell you how to think or feel politically, because I am not. So get outside. What's going on in your echo chamber? If you are a very extreme feminist, what's going on in the manosphere? What are those incels saying? Get some information here. Have the broad spectrum. A broad spectrum brings balance, and balance is important. It stops us from becoming very, very extreme and very damaging and hostile, but also stops us from being just easily swayed by one person and following them like sheep. We need to be able to have this balance and to figure out kind of where we stand on situations. Then we go back to that narrative, don't we? So separate facts from the frame or the narrative that we're being told. Is there a spin here? We know in politics there's often a lot of spin to whip people up in order to have a political idea that they need to follow. So what's the unspoken assumption here? What are we kind of being asked to kind of buy into or believe? And keep your values. What are your values? If you think you are a good person and you don't want to see harm to come to anybody, then why are you vilifying a certain group? Or why are you being angry about a certain identity? Or why are you feeling so aggressive about a certain thing? Does this align with actually who you really are or who you actually want to be? Not your political team. Politics isn't a team. You're not supporting Labour. You're not supporting the Conservatives. You're not supporting the Green Party. You're not supporting the Liberal Democrats. You're not supporting reform. You are deciding if they serve you, if they stand for what you believe in and what you want. You are not favouring them. This isn't like, I don't know, a football team. This isn't a netball team. This isn't your favorite TV program. This is people's lives and decision makers. So it's really important. So name the emotion, who's speaking and why, ask for evidence or counter evidence, diversify your media diet, separate facts from framing or narrative, and anchor to your own values. Trust yourself to make decisions. Don't always just listen to one person or one source, and be comfortable providing some challenge or broadening that topic if you should choose to discuss it. So let's have a look at what this means in a real situation. So the real political situation that I'm talking about here is a claim that was in the press recently. The UK government is going to charge £50 a day if you park in the same spot for over 48 hours. Right, so this was a claim trending on social media, suggesting that Prime Minister or current Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government had introduced or was about to introduce a new nationwide penalty scheme because everyone's after our money. And if your car sits in the same space for more than 48 hours, you'll be fined £50 per day. So let's go to fact checking. Is this true? Is this accurate? So according to Reuters, which is a very good source to check actually, they have debunked it. There is no evidence of such a policy, law, or regulation that is in motion. So somebody's come up with this. Is somebody trying to target people that are worried about parking? I don't know. I'm not sure. But it is a good example because it sounds plausible. It sounds like something the government will want to do. It sounds like that could be in the realms of reality. And it plays on our fear of the big state, these powers that be, these people that kind of control and their decisions impact us. So it uses concrete numbers. So we believe them, £50, 48 hours. Triggers emotional reactions like resentment, fear of loss, or identifying with that situation. I need to park my car. I can't afford that money. It's a cost of living crisis, all of these things. So it sets you in a panic mode. But actually going off and doing a little bit of research and figuring it out might make you realize I'm believing something that isn't true. So there's a lot of data out there that isn't actually true. Find your data. And I don't mean like it's published in the paper even. You need to go to like legitimate, trustworthy sources. Now, I don't know where this has come from, but I certainly can imagine that it would bring a certain reaction from quite a few people. And therefore, yeah, that's not great. So let's apply our 6 stages. So let's name the emotion here that has been triggered. So resentment, fear, frustration, another rule, another tax. It's always us having to pay, whatever it is, but we're feeling a particular way. We're not liking that. Keir Starmer's not our guy. Don't like him. He's an idiot, whatever. So who is spreading this claim and what's their motive? So social media accounts. Okay, so it's social media accounts. Well, if they're maybe anti-government or anti-Labour maybe this is what they're spreading because they kind of want to do that. Maybe it's a local activist page that doesn't like people driving cars, and actually this is linked in some way to climate change. Maybe it's satire turned serious, and somebody read it in a satirical comic strip and now thinks it's real. And the motive, what are people getting from this? So, stoking outrage, distrust in government that people have elected, and gaining clicks or shares. People on the internet want clicks and shares, guys, because that is good for their algorithm. And sometimes, sharing something and putting it out on there and people are interested in it, then they're going to spread it around, and that makes, for some people, an opportunity to make money off it. So again, there's this other level and agenda. So what do? We should ask for some evidence. We should research this. Okay, what's the source? Has it been reported by a trustworthy outlet? Is there any other legislation or official statement? If I went on the government website, for example, would I see this? Is this is this going to be debated at House of Commons? Is this genuinely coming from a place that we can recognise? So we could search on government websites in this case, legal records, statements from the transport parking authorities, fact checking by, as I said, Reuters, to see if this is accurate information and that we can believe in it. So once we've done that, and it doesn't seem to be coming from anywhere legitimate, let's have a look. Does this claim appear in mainstream press? So is it in the press? So it's not in the Guardian, it's not in the Daily Mail, it's not in the Sun, it's not in the Telegraph. Okay, so if the main media outlets aren't reporting it, then potentially this isn't the case. And then think about it. Is it in the left-leaning paper? Is it in the right-leaning paper? Because newspapers in Britain actually are the only public media outlets that can have a political bias. So whilst the TV channels like the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, etc., Sky, have to be kind of politically unbiased, the newspapers can have a left or right lean depending on where they want to, and they can change as well. So the Sun has changed its lean in the past before. So you'll find no reputable newspapers or official sources pushing it. So therefore, it's definitely only rumours, and it's definitely social media. And that should be your red flag, an absolute red flag. So you've got no evidence, and you've also got your media sources that aren't even supporting it. So it definitely shouldn't be true. So what's the bare claim here? Let's strip it down. Let's separate the facts from the framing. So the narrative. So the narrative is £50 a day, 48 hours. It's a big brother government. We're scared of government controlling us. We're scared of the government reducing our rights, our freedoms, our liberties. An example of authoritarian overreach. We don't want that. This is scary. The framing turns a parking regulation into an existential threat. And again, it's just another thing that's chipping away at us when we're already feeling very beaten down and miserable with the state of how things are at the moment. So it starts to make us feel a particular way. So let's link that to our values then. Does believing or rejecting this align with how you want to be seen in the world, how you want to think, how you want to act? So you want to base your decisions on truth, not on fear or outrage. So I'm going to take this with a pinch of salt. I've researched it, I've verified it. It isn't true. And if you act or complain, vote, protest based on a false claim, you undermine your integrity, and it ends up being a waste of energy. So parking was our example here, but can you think of any examples in the press that maybe people have certain feelings about, but maybe aren't really accurately researching? I'm sure there are loads of examples here, but these are things that we need to be thinking about and making astute judgments of. And this is exactly what I want to share, this critical thinking strategy. Use it, deploy it, get to the bottom of things. And it's probably going to give you a little bit of emotional well-being as well, which is absolutely important. So after that emotionally loaded claim, you've done the work and you have realized it's unsupported, it's emotionally loaded, and it's actually not reliable. So you might even ask, what would I need to see to believe that this claim is true? So that's your next step. A government bill, maybe a parliamentary debate, a legal draft, or an official announcement somewhere. So why is following these 6 stages of critical thinking helpful? So it's going to be helpful because it's making us check things. It makes us trust things. It makes us be able to be accurate with the information. It simplifies complexity, doesn't it? And it stops us from this outrage over things that aren't true and therefore generating such a massive reaction. And we don't want to be like, government control might be something that people are genuinely fearful of, and ID cards is something that maybe that would be an example of. But it is worth researching, looking at what's going on in different parts of the world, looking at why this might be coming and why you feel the way you do. I mean, go with your gut. If you don't like something, then that is again aligning. Ooh, I've just knocked the camera there. I hope you enjoyed that. Did the world move for you? But yeah, it's making you feel a certain way, and your gut instinct sometimes is right for you, isn't it? So yeah, it's important that we are, as I said, that lovely word, discerning in how we get to our decisions. So hopefully that's a strategy that you can use. And I can't promise that embracing truth will always feel good because of the psychology. So if stuff in my videos makes you feel like I'm a liar or makes you feel uncomfortable, is it because it's the truth and not something beautiful? Is it because I am making you look into a mirror about the realities of our situation? However, by trying to present things factually and have data and to make, accurate judgments and, to be as astute with my observations as I can, I'm hoping to give you some power and some power to me, and power to choose, power to resist, power to act in the right circumstances. Nobody wants you to channel your energy on a fruitless cause, but equally, some things are worth fighting for. And if you feel strongly about it and you've done your homework and you've done your 6 steps of critical thinking, then absolutely, that's your green light to go, isn't it? And if you see a headline tomorrow, and let's face it, there's constantly going to be headlines, and you do get a feeling in the pit of your stomach that makes you feel angry or anxious or nervous, pause, ask, and investigate. It doesn't cost much to research something. We have little computers in our hands now, little phones, so we can track all this information. And don't surrender your mind for somebody else's narrative, okay? Be the person who can make decisions. And I said this in my last video, didn't I? My previous one, because, the other one was Taylor Swift. But it's okay to be interested in politics. It's okay to care about things. That's to be encouraged. But it isn't good to shoot other people down just because you don't like that they have a different viewpoint. It's not okay to not listen to both sides of the story. It's not okay to be varied and fact check and to just follow and sit in an echo chamber. Those are things that we shouldn't be doing. We should be doing a range of things to ensure that we can act in our most authentic and genuine way. So let's have a think about this. What claims have you believed? Are you a critical thinker? Or have you ever caught yourself believing something and then realizing that wasn't the truth? I'm happy to hear your little stories, or if you've got any thoughts on this. Do you agree with me as always? Is critical thinking something that we need more of? Are we afraid of embracing difficulty or the reality of our situations? So again, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this. So feel free to drop me a comment below. So let's continue. So let's try to be rational. Let's try to have a bit of skepticism and not always engage so much with this person said this and try to figure it out for ourselves. Avoid emotional echo chambers. People want you to feel a certain way and they want you in this state of stress and anxiety because it benefits them. Even nice claims, good things can equally be, untrue. So again, we should apply this to lots of different situations. And think about unequal access and safety. Think about, is there a drawback for a marginalized group? Think about, checking that it isn't damaging to a certain identity or individual. We don't want to defame, defamation of character here. We don't want people to be, penalized. We want to just be accurate and sharing the facts as and what. So hopefully I've helped you navigate some of the lies, the myths, the misconceptions, and have given you some critical thinking tools, and that you now have a repertoire of skills that you can use in this climate of fear, deep fakes, and misinformation and fake news and all that stuff. So your voice can be a bridge. and not a barrier, and that you can maybe share some insightful and intelligent conversation and discussion, and maybe learn something from other people, or have a little look at different perspectives, or be a bit more empathetic about certain situations. So that's all for me today. I look forward to hearing from you. I'll see you next time. Ta ta for now. Bye.